Hey, I'm Nirkala. I talk about horror movies and other weird shit I find on the internet. Today's topic is the 4 weirdest horror movies I found on Amazon Prime, so I'm gonna just jump right into it. Now, Howard Lovecraft in the Kingdom of Madness is like an Addams Family ripoff cropped with some Lovecraftian cliff notes that got puked on. This weird, anemic little fucker is somehow an expert in interdimensional sorcery and keeps accidentally creating rifts in space time. And in the first 20 minutes, horrible CGI monsters come through rifts, and some stick up their asses looking distant relatives show up and fix it. The animation's barely better than what you'd see on public access TV. All the characters are like these sickly, pale faced Ken and Barbie dolls in Victorian clothes, mumbling about eldritch bullshit. One of my first thoughts watching this, I needed to smoke way more weed. So I did. And then it became the most hilarious thing I'd ever seen. My next thought was that I had no idea who this was made for. Kids? Adults with bad taste? Weird 12-year-old mall goths? That was probably the most confusing part. Who was this made for? Who was the target audience? So the best part is where Cthulhu himself just randomly decides to let this weird little fucker Howard tame him and call him Spot, like a puppy. An eldritch god that can supposedly drive you insane the moment you look at him is in this show, a cucked as fuck stupid little puppy thing. I'm so glad I watched this while I was stoned out of my gourd. Otherwise, I think I would have gotten brain damage. There's 2 rules about watching Howard Lovecraft. You need to be high out of your mind, and second, deliberately watch episodes out of order. And watch the sequel before the first one. Both because it doesn't matter, and because the less sense it makes, the funnier it is. This movie's fucked up. I am only a little bit familiar with the first 8 Ball Clown film, as I have not watched the entire film yet, but I can say it follows a more traditional horror plot, as in there's a clearly defined evil clown villain who is being antagonized by children who are fucking prank calling him, who wants revenge, tries to hunt down the prank callers. There's a really clearly defined horror plot. It also seemed to have a larger budget and higher production values. The sequel, 8 Ball Clown 2, man, where do I even start? It's as if between the 2 films, they just stopped giving a fuck. And I don't know whether that's good or bad in this case. It's got the sleaziness of a Rob Zombie film and the surreal insanity of like trying to imitate David Lynch. It's got this Inland Empire vibe if Inland Empire was not trying to be art and was filmed in like rotting trailers and rotting basements on a budget of $2,000. In spite of all that, it's actually pretty enjoyable to watch. 8 Ball Clown 2 really just has 2 modes. In the first mode, a bunch of insane clowns on crocodile and or heroin are stumbling around in a basement eating babies and yelling at each other while trying to run away from zombies, I think. They all talk through delay effects, pitch shift effects, and other trippy shit, which makes it super disorienting to watch. And just when you almost can't take it anymore, it switches to 8 Ball and Jolly Pop in a psychiatrist's office, having to explain why they want to kill people. Or sometimes it will just suddenly switch to news reporters walking around in the woods. So, like, this shift back and forth between psychotic and relatively sane points of view, it gives the whole thing a sense of contrast. On top of all that, this insane film has a way of surprising you. It doesn't just shock you, it weirds you out. Yeah, it's like that kind of movie. So, some kind of militia of kooky oatmeal faced vampires is fighting some like bargain basement Robocop. And this has something to do with police and drug trafficking. Follow me so far? So, oh yeah, so the vampires bunny hop. They don't move any other way. They have no other way of movement. And yet somehow they're the most terrifying threat in the world, but all they can do is bunny hop. And it takes them forever to get across the room because they're bunny hopping. It's the most bizarre thing. They make the most bizarre, derpy sounds. The movie must have been so much fun to make. And I feel like that's one of the most important things to me. You can tell they just didn't give a fuck. So if you can sit through the first 30 minutes, eventually there's some kind of special vampire who's also a gorilla for reasons. And he falls in love with a ghost lady. Just stay with me. And the vampire creating sorcerer guy, who's also a Taoist for some reason, decides that the gorilla vampire and the ghost lady can get married, but they have to work for his weird bunny hopping vampire mafia. Then, like, the ghost lady and the vampire gorilla have to fight the off brand Robocop. And the whole thing is just fucking bonkers cuckoo insanity. This is a masterpiece. It's a cult classic, one of the best kung fu and Asian horror films ever made, and for that reason, I'm going to give this a lot more attention. This is probably going to be like the longest part of the video. I just want to give a warning. There's some scenes where the antagonist, the villain of the film, tries to rape someone, and a lot of his general behavior is kind of like skeezy and super creepy and misogynist and fucked up, and he's just kind of got like a Buffalo Bill vibe. Anyway, so Human Lanterns was created by the Shaw brothers and released in 1982. The basic idea is people are disappearing, and the two male leads, Master Tan and Master Lung, are trying to figure out why people are disappearing, but they are not cooperating at all. This is not a buddy cop film. So they're accusing each other of having something to do with the disappearances, and it gets really dramatic and complicated. Please forgive me if I'm mispronouncing anything. They're both extremely skilled in two different schools of Kung Fu. They've had a rivalry for a long time. The fight choreography by Tang Xia of Rage of the Tiger is like, it's really good actually. And French Wikipedia described Chia's choreography in this film as classic and aesthetic kung fu. And they're both on the same level. They're both very wealthy kung fu masters, but their personalities are like night and day. They're completely different. This movie throws out these beautiful moments just to draw you in, and then it hits you with the ugliness and the horror and gore and torture, and then there's these beautiful, well choreographed moments, and then the ugliness and the violence again, and it's this incredible interplay of ugliness and beauty. The villain of the story is freaking terrifying. He takes a lot of different forms. He's kind of like this trickster demon in a mask. He comes out of nowhere. He hunts his victims without mercy. The costume design is incredible. This film keeps shocking and surprising me. It's not so much the intensity of violence as much as the atmosphere built around it. The scenes are executed in this way that's almost hypnotic. It just pulls you in. It's hard to like look away, even though it's so ugly and fucked up. So any good horror director puts a great amount of care and thought into the ending. I mean, the ending is always important in a movie, but I personally feel that the ending is especially important in horror because some of the best horror has been ruined by suddenly having a mega happy ending. Like, oh, well, you know, like the ghosts and me are all buddies now and I saved the day, whoa! Like, and that's kind of my big gripe with the guy who did Sixth Sense. So, he's a genius, but he's terrible at endings. His endings are so bad. This is a classic case of a perfect, flawlessly executed horror ending. The thing is, a good horror ending cannot answer too many questions. It needs to haunt you. It needs to haunt you at least a little. The conclusion of Human Lanterns has this eerie, haunted, poetic feeling. There's a general feeling of conclusion, but no closure. It's almost as if the killer has been. It's almost as if, like, yeah, maybe he's been defeated. Maybe he's ran off. Maybe he's, not around anymore. But his spirit will linger, driving everyone mad. And it's that sense of inconclusiveness. It's that sense of mystery. It's that ending the movie on a question that is so important. Anyway, so that's my video about the 4 weirdest as fuck horror movies I have found on Amazon Prime. I hope you enjoyed it, and please subscribe and comment or whatever. And if you'd like me to review some other horror movie or whatever, just comment or whatever.